Hi, I'm Anthony Originello, CEO of the Chartered Professionals in Human Resources for BC and Yukon. We represent more than 8,000 members, and as the organization dedicated to advancing the HR profession through education, advocacy, awareness, professional development, as well as our recognized and impactful CPHR designation, we are proud to be a sponsor of this show. We have been the voice of the HR profession since 1942. Learn more about us at cphrbc.ca.
In this edition of Careers That Matter, I'm joined by Mike McPhie. Mike, welcome.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here.
What kind of work do you do? What's your company and what's the work that you do within it?
Yeah, so the company I'm with is called Falkirk Environmental Consultants Limited. We're based in North Vancouver, about a 50-person firm. We work extensively throughout the resource sector, advancing projects through the permitting, regulatory, Indigenous engagement in space, and we basically support companies in that journey. And I serve as the executive chairman. I was one of the partners of the firm, and it's been a great journey. We're only 5 years old, and last year we made the Globe and Mail top growing businesses in Canada. We've been recognized as it's a great journey, and I've been a real privilege to be part of a group of amazing people in building that.
So is your job primarily running the company?
I'm more on the development side. I look at I work with the team and look at the future. Where can we grow? What can we do? How can we build this? How can we fit a need in the marketplace? And so, as chair of the board, I have a certain governance role and an overall management role. But I really work with my team, and my specific kind of area of work is working with clients, but also looking at where we're going to go in the future.
How many team members do you have? That work directly with you? I know that you said you have 50 in the company.
Yeah. About 4 people that direct report to me, but I play an overarching role in supporting the growth and support the team.
So what specifically are the types of duties that you're engaged in then when you're dealing with outward facing, forecasting or envisioning the future and managing?
Look, Stu, I started as a junior person working on the land up in the Arctic looking for diamonds. I've worked in operations. I've worked in throughout my career, being on the ground, understanding the business and growing businesses. And I've been involved in building 3 or 4 that have been then taken over, either public or private. And so I'm kind of an entrepreneur at heart. I love ideas. I remember hearing somebody had a job title early on in Interwest, I think, and apparently he was like the chief of ideas, the chief of new ventures. And I always thought, wow, okay, what an amazing place to be, right? So I love being in a position where I can connect talent to opportunity. And that's the role I play within Falkirk is we have an amazing group of people. How can we best utilize their skills? Where is the need in the marketplace? We built some areas. We do a lot of work in water stewardship, for example. And we're a West Coast company. We work across the country, but for resource projects, everything begins and ends with water. Can you protect it? Can you manage it? Can you steward it? So I saw that as an opportunity. So I worked with our team, and we now have a really, really strong group of people that are becoming quite well recognized, both in Canada and internationally, because water is so important, right? Everything begins and ends with it. And so those are the kind of things I do in my business. Is I look for opportunities, I look for people, I look for companies we can work with and try and create those viable businesses.
You mentioned earlier that you were up in the Arctic looking for diamonds, so you've worked in the resource sector. Yeah. Did you envision yourself running a resource company at some time, and then what happened?
Yeah, well, I did. In fact, I've been the CEO of a couple of companies that have gone on to be successful and taken over by other bigger companies. It's kind of the way the resource sector works. You start with ideas, you build them. I think for me, and for young people that are looking to get into the resource sector, first off, you have to understand the business. Don't spend all your time in university and in downtown coffee shops in Vancouver. You got to get out there. You got to spend your time in the field and learn the business, learn the people, learn what this thing is about. And that's what I did. I worked in Northern Ontario in the town of Timmins for 5 years. the hometown of Shania Twain, right?
Right.
You know, and I'm a fan. It's all good, you know. We were up there, but I learned and I cut my teeth on operations. Like I said, look, if I'm going to work in the mining business, I got to understand it. So I worked in operations. I understood what tailings dams are and what underground mining is and what geologists do and all that kind of stuff, right? And I think that's really important for anybody who's considering a career in this business is like learn the stuff. Go work in Prince George. Go work in Prince Rupert. Go spend time up in different parts of our country because, you know, there's so much of our population is along that string along the border, right? But so much of our wealth comes from the rest of Canada. But so many young people coming out, they want to stay close. They want to stay close to their friends and to their family and everything. Well, you know what? That's going to really limit you. If you spend time and you go out to you go to Kitimat, you go to Terrace or Smithers or, you know, wherever it is, and you get to understand, you can always come back, right? That's what I did. I spent time and then I brought my family back to Vancouver where my family's from. But that's a really important part of it. And so for me, you know, building Falkirk has been really gratifying, mostly because of the people and the work that we get to do. But it's also grounded in that understanding of what the business actually is.
So if you take a look at your current success, how important was your willingness to take chances in your career? I
think, you know, I've told this story. I remember I was living in just around Kitsilano, downtown Vancouver, and I was a young guy, did a master's degree, this sort of thing. And I was like, and I got a job in Northern Ontario. And it was a bit of a gut check for me. Like I was going to leave all my friends, you know, playing volleyball on the weekends and go into the pubs in Yaletown or whatever it was. And I watched as the Atlas moving van took everything I owned out of my apartment, put it in a thing and left for Northern Ontario, 8 hours north of Toronto. And I remember standing there on the edge of the curb watching the moving truck leave and go, whoa, I just made a decision that's going to fundamentally alter everything in my life. And it did. But, you know, it was tremendous because I took the risk and I said, okay, you know what? I'm going to go take a junior position in a mining company in Northern Ontario. I don't know a soul. I didn't know one person, but I let them go. I let them moving. And I remember because I showed up in Northern Ontario, I landed there on October 30th. I woke up the next morning on Halloween and there was a foot of snow on the ground and it didn't melt till like next June, right? But I didn't know that at the time. But you know, I made so many friends, I had so many experiences, and I'll never look back on that decision. But sometimes folks aren't willing to do that. They're not willing to say, okay, well, I'm going to go give it a try, right? But you have to. Because that gives you credibility too, because you come back and you talk with somebody working in corporate and they all worked in the field. They know what it's like to get up and work in a camp or do whatever it is. You need to do that and to be able to be legitimate. I think to work in a resource space like it, or finance or whatever, get out in the field, try stuff. You know, it'll be okay because you never know what door's going to open. Like you don't really know. Like I have 3 sons, right? And the thing that I tell them is like, I'm like, get out there, try stuff. Because you think you know what's going on, but you really don't. You just don't, right? Give it a try, and I bet it'll be a success.
Well, thanks for giving us a small glimpse into your world and your career.
Thanks.
Sounds like you've had just an exciting and enjoyable
It's been awesome.
path.
Yeah, it's been really fun.